Okay, looks like it's slowing down a little bit. Welcome to this Business Finland webinar on artificial intelligence. This is the third in our series for AI. In the first one, a few weeks ago, we looked at what Finland is doing as a government, what is the Finnish government strategy, and how it relates to the citizens of Finland. In our second theme, we looked at Finnish businesses and what they are doing. And today we have a really special topic where we're looking at AI and media, specifically how we create and consume media and how that impacts large societal changes in democracy, which is a hugely current topic. So Business Finland is the Finnish government's innovation funding arm. Our role is to ensure the Finnish economy is thriving with innovative research and businesses that reach beyond the borders of our small country. Here in the US, we do this by reaching out to businesses and research organizations to find out if there are mutual interests for commercial or scientific collaboration. Today's agenda speaks directly to many of you working in media, technology, or public and NGO organizations. Before we get started, a couple of house rules. First of all attendees are muted, but you will be able to ask questions via the Q&A chat in your GoToWebinar panel. You can ask the questions anonymously, or you can type in your name and your company or organizations. At the end of the two presentations we have today, I'm gonna read out the questions, but I will not read out your name or your company. That's gonna remain with us in case you want us to reach out to you for further information. The session is recorded, and the recording is gonna be made available to you who are attending and also those who registered and were not able to attend today. Without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce the first speaker, Mr. Thomas Hansen. Mr. Hansen, if I could ask you to turn on your video. He is currently the diplomat in residence at the Alworth Institute for International Affairs at the University of Minnesota. He serves as a chair of the Minnesota Committee on Foreign Relations, and he's been invited today to lay the groundwork on where we are with media and democracy today. Go ahead.
Well, thank you very much, Petra, and a great thank you to Business Finland for organizing this seminar. I mean, the topic is extremely important regarding the future of our democracy in this new media and AI algorithmic environment we're living in this ambient internet that has become now the sea in which we all swim. So in my short introduction here, I'm going to try to put this topic into a larger context, because democracy in general is under tremendous pressure right now globally, as I'm sure you all know. There are many factors playing into this, and the topic we're discussing in this webinar is one of the key factors. Freedom House, which monitors democracy around the world for the past 15 years or more, has registered a decline, a retreat of democracy around the world. In the 1990s, it seemed to be expanding, but in recent years and even decades, it is retreating. And there are many factors for this, and it's generational too. The Pew Research polling organization about 2 years ago did a major study asking how essential is it to live in a democracy? And for people born in the 1930s, 75% answered, yes, it is essential to live in a democracy. For millennials, for those born in the 1980s, that figure was down to 30%. Only 30% thought this was something essential. I heard a German parliamentarian recently describing the same situation in Germany, and he said, look, for the new generation, if democracy cannot deliver on basic economic fairness and on climate change, they're open to other systems. So the challenge is there, and this has been going on even before the media really emerged the way it has now. Robert Putnam from Harvard wrote a very important book called Bowling Alone, and it was in 1995, came out in 2000, showing how people were getting more and more isolated, how basic trust was breaking down, citizen to citizen, and also citizen to government. Now, I think that erosion of trust has gone much further in the United States, probably than it has in Finland. But I can imagine you're seeing some of the same trends, even if they maybe are not quite as acute as what we have going here in the US. So as I say, these trends were already underway for many reasons, really putting democracy into question. But the emergence of our social media environment, AI, as I say, this algorithmic universe has really increased the pressure on democracy. You know, Google with DeepMind now as its main AI asset, working with neural networks and self-learning AI is just one of the companies that is going further and further to personalize the way we interact with the internet and with media. Now, these are private companies, and so this personalization is being done ultimately for marketing reasons to try to maximize profits. That's the main reason for doing this. But it's having the spin-off effect of creating echo chambers that we all are gravitating to, sort of parallel conversations that are going on that don't overlap anymore. It's an endless U loop that has developed now in this media environment, and it's adding to the decline in trust of the larger society. People will trust their own little niche, but not the broader society. So the debate on this is underway. It's going very slowly. People are focusing on how to control harmful content, how to control political speech that is detrimental to democracy. And that's important. But I think even more important is taking a look at the deeper issue of the filtering mechanisms themselves, the platforms that make the decisions on what is filtered and what isn't and how it's filtered. This gets structural, and it has to do with the fact that a few large companies dominate this now. How do we counteract this? How do we create a kind of a mediation, safe spaces, if you will, restore trust? Of course, no filter, no mediator can be totally neutral or totally balanced. But it's clear that something has got to start happening to offset this. And we don't want to leave it just to the government. I mean, you know, countries like China are doing a very good job in this regard of filtering content, and we don't want to fall into that trap. So really, it's going to be the private sector initiatives that are going to have to take the lead here, to some extent working with government, but where the initiative is coming there. And that's where the topic today is so important. I think what Jarno is working on in Finland is very important, very central to this larger issue. So with that, I would like to turn the floor over to Jarno, and I look forward to our discussion topic later. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Hansen. So as mentioned, the next speaker and a presentation is by Mr. Jarno Koponen. He is the head of AI and personalization at YLE News Lab. The topic of your presentation is New Tools for Democracy, Combining News Media, AI, and User Experience Design. You are leading teams at YLE News Lab that builds products that combine media content, artificial intelligence, and user experience design. I think you're still on mute, and also I'm gonna make you a presenter, so you'll be able to share your slides.
Great. I hope everyone sees the slides now.
Yes, I hear you and see you.
Here's my voice as well. So first of all, many thanks, Petra. Many thanks, Business Finland. Many thanks, Thomas. Good morning to everyone in there. It's evening here in Helsinki, but let's not kind of focus on that now. It's a great morning. So it's an honor to be here today to exchange thoughts about democracy, about AI, and let's see where it all goes. So my agenda today is this. First, we take a look at the big picture, by exploring some of the important trends that affect news media and democracy. And after that, we jump into concrete examples on how to combine journalism, data science, and design. And finally, I hope we finish up with some insights and then discuss further on with Thomas. So ready? But before kind of going further, I would like to shortly introduce myself. So who is Jarno Koponen? Why should you maybe pay any attention to what I talk in here? So head of AI and personalization, what it means concretely. First of all, the Finnish broadcasting company, it's a non-profit media company. So that's an important thing. And we are funded by the Finnish government. And in my own work, I focus on two things. First, that we create new smart journalistic tools and meaningful news media experiences in a human-centered way. So that's the first focus area for myself. And the second one is that we create the right culture, and the diverse culture and diverse teams to make it actually happen here in YLE News Lab. And myself, I'm a combination of a designer and humanist, having a master degree on both fields. And last 10 years, I've been focusing on creating smart experiences powered by machine intelligence. So that's me. And then, before kind of going deeper into what is happening in YLE, I would like to point out that before joining YLE, I spent myself some time in US and in Silicon Valley. We were building with my startup, with my own startup, a filter bubble breaking technology. And I think we managed to do that. This Random was the app that we were building, and it was covered by the New York Times and Vice and others, and they were saying that it's like unFacebooking, breaking the filter bubble. So basically, I know from experience a patented technology using algorithms and new user interfaces that these new technologies can be used to open up one's mind. So to actually help you to discover new interesting things by combining relevance and serendipity. And at YLE, I've been working with personalization technologies. So YLE Newswatch is the YLE's personalized news app. And most recently, I've been working with our smart news assistant called Voitto, or Victor in English. And I'll be talking more about Voitto's powers later on. So that's what I've been doing at YLE. Concretely trying to bring together journalistic content, AI, and new user experiences. And I'd like to kind of, or what I want to do is to test my ideas and hypotheses. And what I've been doing, I've been writing expert articles about AI, new user experiences, machine intelligence, integrants, and VentureBeat. And also, just very recently, I helped Google and London School of Economics to create an introductory course about machine learning for journalists. So that's what drives me as well, to kind of spread the message and to take as many people, a diverse set of people, to discuss about these things in an international level. So now the big picture, what I promised. What is actually happening in the world? What is affecting how news media is developing or should develop in the future? First of all, digital and physical reality are today seamlessly interwoven. Think private and public, political and commercial. They are all coming together in my pocket, in my wrist. So there is a Google search interface. There is a map that guides me everywhere. There is an app recommending to me what to put into my mouth. And then again, my personal heart rate, my personal KPI is recorded by my smart devices. And at the same time, in my pocket, I have a view to the stock market, the very kind of dynamo of our capitalistic global system. So digital and physical are seamlessly interwoven today. Second, everyone is trying to get your attention. And at the same time, the interface is actually coming closer and closer to you. So what is happening now is that your mobile lock screen, without you opening any app, you can actually see the content. You can already message with your friend or experience the content without opening the apps directly on your lock screen. So that's one thing that is happening. Everyone is competing on your attention, trying to get your act on their content. The second, or the further development is that first we have the smart interfaces, and now the content itself is coming smart as well. Netflix is already experimenting in this space. What we are seeing YouTube and TikTok doing is using user-generated content to create a smart stream that really captures your attention. So the content itself is becoming like software. And all this is happening in a world in which a citizen is affected by social media, these tech platforms directly. How citizens manifest their citizenship in the polls or on the streets, be it Trump's politics, be it Black Lives Matter that move people in the US and here in Finland as well, or be it the things that are now happening in Asia. So digital platforms are directly affecting how international and local politics evolve. And all this is happening at the same time that these platforms, social media platforms, are used to radicalize people. So be it the international anti-vaccination movement or QAnon conspiracy theories, basically it's already landed here in Finland. Or then how far right is now mobilizing in the different parts of Europe. And now it's harder and harder to tell the difference between fact and fiction. So here is our president, the president of Finland, Sauli Niinistö. And there's a deep fake of Sauli Niinistö there. Okay. And then on the right, there is the deep fake of President of Russia, Vladimir Putin. Now, they could be made to say anything from total nonsense to a declaration of war. And now the deep fake itself, it's not that, like, it's a technology, but how you use it is meaningful. So basically what you could do now with these personalized interfaces, smart interfaces, you could make our president, Sauli Niinistö, to declare war to Russia using deepfake and then send it as a notification to every person, say in the Russian internet. What would that actually make happen in the world? And now all this development taken into account, this is a question I've been thinking quite a bit lately. Who can today access the data about the truth, about the reality? Now we start to talk about the media, why media matters, why news media matters. So this is how journalistic process is supposed to work. Where first we have and collect data about individuals, communities, companies, society, phenomena, environment. We turn that into a journalistic understanding of what's important, what's the story that should be told to people. And then we turn that into the forum, be it a podcast or live TV or whatever, what works for different kind of audiences. So that's how journalism is supposed to work. But today, like this mentioned by Thomas also, the data about our reality is actually not accessible anymore for journalists. It's inside the data troves of Facebooks and Amazons and ByteDance and who not. These big tech giants have the data about individuals, society, communities, environment, and different kinds of phenomena. So the loop is broken. So the bigger question is, how can we tell about the reality as journalists if we can't access it anymore? And this is a huge thing. Now, this is what I've been thinking, and this is the basis for what we are trying to do at YLE News Lab. So I think that the driving values of news media won't ever be fully realized in the algorithmic reality if the news media itself isn't creating and developing algorithmic solutions. So this needs to happen. And what this means concretely, we need to bring together content, AI, and UI to create new journalistic methods, tools, and experiences. And more concretely, two main things. So we should bring together journalism, AI, and UI in order to make new tools and methods for journalists and newsrooms to understand today's reality, and at the same time, we should bring them together to create new forms and experiences for to explain this complex world around people for diverse set of people. And how does this happen? So how can we actually do it? So some concrete examples here. We brought together journalists, data scientists, and designers in order to create Voitto. I mentioned Voitto before. What is Voitto, or Victor in English? It's a smart news assistant, and it learns directly from your lock screen. And now I'm not trying to say that this is the way to do like the hyper-personalized news, that's our kind of goal in here, but rather to learn how to engage with people, how to serve citizens better in today's world where everyone is trying to get your attention. So Voitto, it's very simple to use. This is basically, you get news alerts from Voitto on your mobile lock screen, and then you can just tell Voitto if the news that you get is interesting or not. Just thumbs up, down, easy as that. And Voitto learns all the time and gets better. And for us as a YLE, as a news media, we are not just having a one story about a certain phenomena. So our journalistic policy makes sure that even though you would be interested in, say in economics, you are not just getting a one view of economy, but our policy, journalistic policy, make sure that you get a diverse views on economics. And now Voitto learns directly from the lock screen, your reading history. And what we try to do always when we develop these new things, we try to validate our kind of success through data. So right now, 90% of those people who turn Voitto News Assistant on their mobile phone also keep it on. So they keep getting YLE news on their lock screen with Voitto, and that's huge. And Voitto has been noticed internationally. Oxford Reuters Institute highlights Voitto as a concrete example, a pioneering example in combining journalistic content, AI, and UI. And Google just recently used Voitto as a concrete example on using machine learning in news media. Now, a second example, journalism, data science, and design, Troll Factory. And what is that? Troll Factory is an educational game about information operation. And it promotes media literacy by combining genuine social media examples with gamified storytelling experience. And what does that mean? You become an internet troll in the game. So you use targeted advertising, botnets, and other methods that trolls can use in order to kind of get more power online. And this was a huge thinking for us. Can we actually use concrete social media examples in order to show the reality of what is happening when you scratch the surface of social media, the hate speech, the conspiracy theories? And this is now very graphical in here, so a trigger warning to everyone. But it shows the reality, and it is comparable to catastrophe reporting and war journalism, that you need to show the reality as it is in order to show the reality of information operation. And again, the impact, we try to validate everything that we do to data. So 70% of those people that have started Troll Factory actually go through it. So even though the topic is very complex and it's very, very kind of challenging topic in general, 70% of those people go through and spend 6 minutes in average in the game. And yeah, it has gotten international recognition. The Grunge, Ars Technica, Fast Company, and others have been writing about Troll Factory. And now here is the gist of the feedback. So we have gotten tons of feedback across the globe about Troll Factory, and people have been happy that they can see what is happening behind the surface, the reality of misinformation operation and computational propaganda. And the gist of it is that okay, the reality must be shown in order to educate. And yeah, we've won some prizes. I'm very happy for the team and happy for the YLE. Just recently, we won the European Digital Media Award 2020, beating, for example, BBC. So that's huge. And yeah, you can try it out here. Trollfactory.yle.fi. Go and try it out. So some insights and takeaways, I hope. So why we do these things? It's not just that, okay, let's use these modern technologies to try out what can be done, but rather how do we fulfill our mission as a public broadcaster that tries to make sure that people, citizens of Finland, have a fact-based understanding what is happening in the world. So news media, from gatekeepers to connectors. I think there has always been different kind of perceptions about the reality. But in today's world, we actually, these digital platforms make it possible to create very fast, amplify very fast messages or information that is far away from our shared reality. So say these conspiracy theories. It can happen in YouTube or Instagram with targeted messages, or in closed groups, people start to think about the world in a certain way. So what we should do as a news media, I think we should be the connector. So now we should be able to provide this fact-based environment or connection with these different kind of realities or perceptions of realities, and make sure that people have a common ground when talking about the reality around us, be it political, cultural, societal, ecological, that news media actually connects different kinds of worldviews and different kinds of people. And I think that it only can happen if we combine journalism, data science, and design concretely, that we create these new kind of experiences in a world which is today increasingly governed and controlled by algorithms. So we need to be able to connect these areas and bring them together to understand how this new reality works, and to actually create stories to depict this new reality to people in engaging ways. So I think that's me for now. Thank you. Jarno's presentation was here, so I think Petra, you will kind of grab the screen from here.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. That was very, very interesting. Tom, if we can ask you to turn on your video as well and get you here online so we can start a conversation. Thanks both of you, Tom for the groundwork, and then Jarno for the technical part of it. I want to start by Tom, something you mentioned earlier is like how we today live in a world where we're talking past each other and we're in these silos, having parallel conversations. And bring that where you ended, Jarno, where you said news media should be the one that's bringing these two together. Now, a question to both of you, just to kick this off, is how do you do that when there's no trust, when you have two sides and they don't trust each other and they don't trust the media? How can the media be the mediator when, let's say, one party or both parties don't trust the media?
Thomas, do you want to go first, or?
No, Jarno, you go ahead. I'll come in afterwards.
Well, I think it goes back to the stories. How do you tell the stories of or about these different kinds of reality without condemning, without like going above and saying that that's wrong or you shouldn't think it that way? So you should try to apply an objective worldview that, okay, these different perceptions of reality exist, and you should be able to make sure that different sides are covered when you depict the world. So I think that's one of the key things when you think about the stories that help different kinds of people to understand what is actually happening in the world?
Yeah, I mean, that's the key question, because as I said earlier, there really is no such thing as a totally neutral mediator, right? I mean, any filter is a filter. So why would people trust what Jarno is doing more than our current filters? And I think that to the extent that there's consciousness raising about what's going on now, I mean, the fact that the big data is being used by our large companies, and I mean, it's very logical they do so. These are private companies, to maximize profit, right? They have a profit motivation, and to the extent that something like a journalistic endeavor here would have a larger set of values, not just profit, would be a reason perhaps to trust that more. You know, I'm very worried about how the big data now is being assembled through web scraping. You know, there are tools out there now to really, as you say, personalize, use this big data. You know, we have computers now that can do a quintillion computations a second. That's a billion. I mean, this big data is being crunched, and so you know, a company like Clearview AI, which is getting a lot of discussion now, has been scraping the internet to pick up images from high school yearbooks, from everyone's Facebook postings. They claim to have 1 billion images now, 3 billion, excuse me, which they can then coordinate with facial recognition, and they're selling this service to police forces, to private corporations. I spoke on this in July, and at that time, 600 police departments had contracted with Deepview AI, Clearview AI, which is a private company, to provide this kind of big data facial recognition. There's now 2,400, 600, 2,400. So in a way, it's not that much different from what China's doing. I mean, China's got a huge database. It's all in the government's hands. Whereas here, you've got government organizations, police forces, companies availing itself of big data that's being collected by a private company. So another example of this is Clear Channel, which is using 500,000 billboards using radar to monitor what we do. So if you pass one of these billboards, it picks up your cell phone information, and say it's a Netflix ad, they can tell you whether you watched a Netflix program that evening. They can provide that information to Netflix. So the more people know about the extent of the intrusion on our lives through these algorithms as they're currently being used in the private sector, and make a distinction between that and what the kind of thing that Jarno was trying to do. Like I say, the more we're aware of how far it's going in a wrong direction now, that may be the strongest argument for people trusting other kinds of initiatives more. But we'll never get around the issue of what is a neutral arbiter, right? It's always going to be a judgment call, and that's part of the problem.
Maybe
before you answer, Jarno, I have an audience question which relates directly to this. So the question is, do journalists have a Hippocrates oath like the doctors do, and that they should first do no harm? So that's the audience question. And then answer the other question, whether it makes a difference whether the media organization is a for-profit or a government broadcasting company, and how that affects the scenario.
Yeah, so I think my answer kind of directly is related to what Thomas also was saying. It goes back to transparency and trust. Our journalistic policy is transparent. It's out there, like everyone can access it. Everyone can access how we actually practice this kind of code of conduct. So it's out there, transparent, and that's one key thing to kind of make sure that there can be trust based on an open dialogue. So open dialogue, that's one thing, and that actually leads to this non-profit for-profit. For very concretely, when we were building Voitto, Smart Niche Assistant, we didn't optimize our algorithm to get people to kind of pick up their phone as many times in a day as possible. No, we thought that there is a certain amount of information that might be actually useful for a person in a day, and we are not trying to optimize the time you spend with our application, but the kind of the quality that is experienced on your lock screen. And we changed metrics, and this is important. This is a very concrete things when you do the development. The metrics matter, and for us as a non-profit company, our metrics can be different from for-profit companies. And yeah, this trust or what is actually happening with these algorithms and big data, I think one of the key things that is very often, I think it's not that much talked about in the media, is that media itself many times leaves out the fact that what is the value behind using these algorithms? What are the values behind using these algorithms and data? It's very easy to point out that, hey, Facebook, you are bad. You are doing bad things. Jack, change your algorithm because it's just like spreading misinformation. Or Sander, like Google is doing something wrong, like change that. But in the end of the day, if you look at the values, if you look at the business logic, if you are being intellectually honest, these certain things make sense. So there's a clash also. There's a polarization that is driven by media narrative to see the giants as something to fight against. And what is forgotten, another point, what is forgotten in this discussion is that what is the responsibility of ordinary people? Like we choose, every one of us choose, like PRISM. Maybe someone here remembers the PRISM issue, that it was found out that actually the big tech companies were giving money, but the data, basically money, but the data to the US government directly. How many actually stopped using Facebook? How many actually stopped using different social media platforms, or Apple, or now the Cambridge Analytica? It was and it went, but how's the stock market going when you look at Facebook and big tech companies? So I think there's a hypocrisy and maybe not that much intellectual honesty here, that we make choices and the narrative is easier to understand if someone is saying that, hey, this is like bad that is happening, but how can we change this? What are the concrete solutions to change this? And this should be the focus, and this is concretely what we are trying to do at YLE, that we try to build alternatives, and it's not easy, and there are no like silver bullets here, but the discussion should be also go back what Thomas was saying here, that it's about the awareness of what are the important things related to data, what are the important things related to algorithms, how they are actually affecting ordinary people. Because I know I've been building and seeing how machine learning systems are built, and they are many times very dumb. They can do a thing, and at the same time there's the media hype that, hey, AI is now doing this and that. So reality check, both when it comes to what this technology can actually kind of achieve today, and reality check is what we actually as human beings, as citizens, want, and how we use these new environments.
Very briefly on the question about private media versus public media and trust. I think once again in a country like Finland, where I perceive you have much more social capital in your country for a lot of reasons, and there's probably a greater trust of government in general. I mean, during the pandemic, we've seen that it's not really a question of autocracy versus democracy on how people handle the COVID, but the amount of social capital, the amount of trust in the society is really what determines how well people are doing. So I know in the United States, there's still a lot of distrust for government, and so it would be harder to have government involved in these kind of solutions too directly. But of course, I mean, we don't want to slip all the way over to the Chinese model, but probably we're going to have some kind of a balance of private government interaction to solve this issue. And countries that have social capital and more trust already will probably be in a better position to move forward.
This is very maybe I continue on that. It goes back to the journalistic decision making. For example, for like what is our policy and who has actually a say, and you could say, and of course, like it depends on the country. But when I look at the US, when I look at Finland, there is like polarization. It's how do you get people's attention today? It's about like making a fire. That's what happens, and this is how you get everyone's attention. Now, it also goes back to who is actually your target audience. Like for a non-profit company, organization such as YLE, our target audience is the whole Finnish population. Now, say New York Times, they have a certain kind of a target audience whom they need to make sure that keeps coming back to their services. So also the journalistic policy, does it have to actually be something that is in tune with the worldviews of the subscribers? So there is a need to make sure that the content isn't like it's diverse enough. I don't know. I'm being hypothetical now and asking a question here rather than stating anything. It's the same when I look at YLE. Are we doing a good job enough in order to make sure that everyone's voice is heard, that these different realities actually are brought together in order to help people to understand what is happening in the world? So that's something that who is your audience, and how does that your audience affect your journalistic decision making? And if your rules or your policies or your code of conduct is transparent, it's out there for everyone to see, what kind of discussion can be had about that policy, and who has to say about that policy? So that goes back to the first thing that you brought up, Thomas, about trust. Whom to trust? In today's world, for YLE, we've been thinking that, hey, we need to make sure that we have journalists across the country. So basically a person in the northern, as far as you can get in Finland, in Lapland, there is a person that knows a journalist that lives in the same area, can say hello even. So people to people. And that goes back, the bigger the unit, the bigger the country. So there must be, I think that there's research on this, like how many connections you can have in order to make sure that there is a human-to-human connection. And then you start to understand why social media is so powerful in affecting what people believe to be true, because it comes close, there's the social connection, and now media cannot replicate that. Journalism or news media cannot become social media itself. And that goes back to what Petra was asking earlier, and what we discussed earlier, like how to tell the stories, how to actually create this social glue that keeps people together in this fact-based reality. So I don't know what you, Thomas, think about that, but I think this kind of this dynamic is very much in effect here.
Yeah, to the extent it can be kind of grounded in reality, as you said, in social reality, that be a key component of what you're building. I quite agree. Quite agree.
Got questions online. One of them is about children. Should we be worried about what children learn online? Because, you know, they're remote schooling, so everyone's online. Can you talk about that, both of you?
Jarno, do you have a kind of a dimension aimed at children and what you're doing?
Yeah, well, I think it goes back to the very mission of YLE. So the whole Finnish population is our audience. So we make content for children. We have actually just started a new effort on creating news for children in order to make sure that there's a kind of a continuum in being curious about world's events, the local events. So that's part of our very core kind of strategy here at YLE. But also, should we be worried? I think we shouldn't be worried. We should be worried about everyone basically who isn't willing to update their understanding how this new digital media or information ecosystem works. And well, it's kind of a new citizen kind of skill. What are the medias that I should be looking into? How many references or how many different news media sites should I have open in my mobile phone in order to make sure that is this actually an accurate depiction of what is going on? And I think we are not quite there in the discussion, in the public narrative. We are still in this threat mode. We are still in the surveillance state mode. Even here, like the big companies, like, okay, now they are coming and taking everything and learning what is going inside my head. No, they are not. They are not having those kind of algorithms. They are not going to be self-aware like AI coming and figuring that out quite yet. So we should be building the narrative towards, like, well, Thomas, you mentioned it, like how to make sure that as many people as possible are more aware of what is our world where we get the information through our most personal digital devices. And second, the thing that isn't the focus of any of these big companies beyond their own business interest is to understand the effects of their services. They are interested in how to make money. So as far as like they are concerned, for example, say that you open the app as many times as possible, spend time in there and make sure that the ad dollars keep coming. That's good. But what is the bigger impact on society? Who is actually who is responsible of understanding that? And this is where I would like to see more openings, because we have amazing academics working on this space, but who is funding that? How to make sure that we are focused on right things on that side as well. So, but yeah, this was a long, winding answer now to a very simple question about should we be worried. So maybe I hand on to Thomas here.
Well, when it comes to children, you know, I'm always struck when I talk with my friends out in Silicon Valley or in the field. Increasing numbers of them are taking a very conservative approach to their childhood, to their child's education. They are, I have some friends who are in the field who literally do not let them use these devices in their first years till 6, 7 years old, actually. And I don't understand the tech as well as they do, but they feel as if to give their children a sense of discriminating the new media, they have to keep them away from it early on to have any choice, because the danger is if kids are, you know, whether you call this new generation iGen, you know, they sleep with their cell phones, and you know, will they have discriminating powers toward tech if they're exposed too early? I know Finland is a pioneer in early education. I know you have a very excellent approach to early childhood where you let the kids be out in reality, right, interacting socially, you know, more than in some other countries. And so I think the same approach may be the right one for these technologies. But that's just, as I say, that's what I see. The more the person I know understands the tech, the more conservative they are about childhood exposure to it.
We need to start wrapping up, so shortly, Jarno, go ahead.
I would also point that maybe the people who are saying that children should not be using these technologies or kind of restrict that, it's because they don't understand the true effects of those technologies. So you just make sure that you might know some parts of the effects, but no one has the whole picture now. And this is, of course, when we don't understand the whole picture, you tend to be more conservative. That's a human nature. It goes back to our brain. basically. So,
but in this case, it's people, the more they know, actually, these are friends in Silicon Valley who are deeply in the field. They're the ones that are more conservative because they're afraid that just the way the brain develops, that the discriminating powers will be less somehow. That's what I keep hearing from them.
Yeah, this is the same. But what I try to highlight here is that we don't even have enough sample data, like the research data about what is actually the effect. So we might see something now, but we don't know. And we should be very aware of that we don't know the long-term thing. And where does the evolution take us? This is something that we created, and what's bad and what's good and what's bad. This is to be decided by the upcoming generations in the end.
Yes.
So we'll see. But I totally, Thomas, I've heard the same and learned from people working on these technologies. So not trying to kind of being
I think we agree.
Being critical.
I knew we would have a very lively panel. We usually go up until 45 minutes. It's now past that time mark. There's a comment online which I think is very good about the business model. So even New York Times is motivated to maintain a message that's suitable to keeping subscribers. So the clickbait thing is in media everywhere. I do want to summarize on a hopeful note. I think I heard a couple of things from Jarno's presentation. One was that you have a proposal where news media is the mediator, where news media is actually bringing both sides together. And one kind of tool to do that would be to have local journalists that are in the communities who know people personally. So that would be a tool to create trust. And to the viewer's comment on the profit model, if we can come up with not just quantitative models where, you know, the more clicks, the more ad revenue, if we could have quantitative, did I say qualitative? If we can have quantitative measures for the news media as well, that might be a way for them to produce content, what you described, Jarno, as in your news organization is the culture. Would that sum up?
Yeah,
okay,
sure.
I see nods. We have to wrap up. Thank you everyone for your comments. Thank you for staying online. Thank you our speakers, Jarno Koponen from YLE News Media and Thomas Hanson from the University of Minnesota. This has been a very interesting conversation. Thank you everyone and have a good night.
Thanks, Petra. Thanks, Jarno.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Thomas. Petra.
Bye-bye.